Look at us. I think we're live.
I think it's
Is
time.
it safe to come out? Is it safe? Is it safe?
Oh wow, there
good?
they are! Look
Hey,
at them.
There's our people.
Hi everybody. Hello.
Hello. Well, it's wonderful to see you again.
Yeah, wonderful.
We have some new props here.
Exactly. We come right out of the jungle.
These are our babies, our baby vines that we brought here to show you. We're very proud of them. Well, they're not our vines, but we didn't.
Well, we're gonna make them.
Yes.
It's like cute
But
little.
we're gonna love them.
Yeah.
So we're gonna move these over to the side here a little bit. You're probably wondering why we have vines, and we're going to tell you about that in just a couple of minutes. But as you know, I'm Jim, and
Jonathan. Hi everybody.
back with you for another virtual tasting. We're loving the smog-free valley out here. We'll maybe give you a pan here in just a minute. We've got some really fun wines. I'm gonna bring some finished bottles to the center that we're gonna do. We're kind of focusing a little bit on Rhones. We talked a little bit about grilling. I've got the fire going. I've got some steaks that we're gonna put on here.
We got some bread baking.
And Jonathan's got some rye bread and a wonderful spread, for a German style spread. So, Mom from Germany, I hope you're on. Mom, I hope you're on from San Diego. And then I have got some barrel samples that I went and pulled, but we'll get to those in a few minutes. So, what I want to encourage you is to grab a glass of wine, join us. I hope you're drinking House Family Vineyards. In fact, I'm sure all of you are drinking House Family Vineyards wines right now. Why wouldn't you be? But we're coming to you live again from the vineyards. Another cooker of a day. I'm still showing about 96 degrees.
Yeah, it was a lot hotter earlier. Yeah.
We were hitting triple digits. Seems like this Wednesday thing is just what we're doing on Wednesdays, but
yeah,
right in front of the open fire oven.
Yeah, that doesn't really help.
But it makes the rest of the world feel air conditioned. So
exactly.
So we're going to talk a little bit. Like I said, I want you to grab a glass of wine. You obviously won't have any of these because nobody's had any of these except for me, and Jonathan's had a taste of these. But we're going to come back and visit them, talk back through the progression of these wines, and kind of how they work. It's only a couple of grapes, but we have a lot of wine here, a lot of diversity.
Exactly. And in that, today we really have sort of like the idea of we're going from the vines to the grapes, which are not here, and then the wines themselves, and we also will have sort of like a progression from the grapes to all these wines. And as the vineyard update, we're going to talk a little bit about planting these new vines. But before I gonna really get into that, we have Dave House here with us, and he's going to tell us a little bit about the early days, how the first vines we ever planted were planted long before my day. So I'm going to get out of the picture for a while and make some social distance space for Dave House to talk about the early days when we started planting the vineyards.
So you're gonna see Dave walk in with some of our beautiful face masks. They're So I've got Van over here. I've got one of these around my neck. These handkerchiefs. And you may be wondering why do we have these? Because I've got some exciting news, and we'll tell you a little bit more about that later on. But we're going to be opening to members only this weekend. We've got permission. There's an amendment from the shelter in place from the county. They've given us a blessing to open for food service style operation, which we can do very legally, very safely. And so we're going to do this. We're going to try to keep it very calm and tranquil. But Friday, we will be reopening. So that's very exciting news. But I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Dave, I'm going to get some steaks and throw them in the oven for later. Why don't you tell us about why we have these baby vines?
I will do that.
Because there were some vines that didn't quite make it.
That's true. They didn't for various reasons. So we look forward to seeing Wine Club members, reservations only, dinner-based service, outdoors, mask required, social distancing, a lot of requirements and restrictions, but allow us to serve starting on Friday. So in 1998, 22 years ago, when I was first building my house and decided that it'd be nice to drive through a vineyard, we planted the vines that you walk through as you come to our tasting room. You're actually going through Cabernet Sauvignon there, but 2 rows down starts Merlot, and below the driveway starts Chardonnay. So there's 3 varietals in that overall vineyard. But in 1998, we didn't know about a disease called red blotch. Red blotch causes the leaves to turn red before harvest, which kills the photosynthesis, which interferes with full ripening of the grapes. We didn't know about the disease. It showed up a few years later. We later found out how to test, or we didn't, University of California, Davis did, and developed a test for the red blotch disease or virus within a wine. Well, unfortunately, our Merlot that we planted in 22 years ago in 1998 had that disease, and we started noticing in the last 5 years leaves turning red, and we had it diagnosed, and sure enough, we had the problem. The only solution is to replant. So when you come here next, you're going to see that starting 2 rows below the pathway, we've ripped out the diseased vines. The good news is we've got new vines that we're going to be able to plant there. And I think Jonathan is going to come back wherever he went. He's going to be back and tell you about the vines that we're planting. Fortunately, those vines have been certified by our employed testers that they are totally virus free. There is no red blotch virus. So Jonathan, you're the guy that's got to plant these, and you and the crew. So tell us what you're going to do.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks for coming in and kind of giving us the the 20-year history of why we have new babies. And well, Jonathan, tell us how we're going to care for those in the nursery.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. So as Dave told you, we're gonna we took out one of the blocks, the Merlot block, because unfortunately it was diseased, and so we're gonna replace them with these young vines here. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the anatomy of vines, and the technique of how these plants are actually produced. And if you look closely here, I'm actually holding 2 plants in my hand, two different varieties, if you will.
I'm for the price of one.
Not quite. So what you see here, I switch to the closer camera in a moment. So what you can see, the roots here, the roots and the stem here, all the way up to here, that is what we call the rootstock. So this is a variety which you probably have never heard of. This variety is called 420A.
I have.
Well, Mr. Fancy Pants back there has. So this is a rootstock, and many rootstocks just have numbers. They don't have names. And rootstocks are used because they have certain properties which the vinifera vines, so what we see up here, the Vitis vinifera, which is in this case a Cabernet Sauvignon, which probably everybody of you has heard of, which they don't. The history here goes even further back than the history of house family vineyards. So we're talking about 200 years, not 20 years. Is Vitis vinifera. So all the vine varieties are all variations of Vitis vinifera, and that's what we call the European grape. So they grew in Europe. There were wild grapes there until the French or whoever started, probably the Romans more rather, started to cultivate them and produced wine. As many of you know, there are wild grape varieties here in North America too. Lambrusca, Labrusca, and Concordia, for instance, two examples of that. Most of those wild varieties, however, don't produce grapes which are very suitable for winemaking. Their rootstocks, however, are very interesting because the roots are not susceptible to a certain pest. It's called the phylloxera. It's an insect that likes to eat the roots, and the North American wild varieties grew up with the phylloxera over millennia, and so they developed a tolerance or sometimes even an immunity. So the phylloxera cannot survive, or at least not kill those roots. When wild varieties from North America were imported into Europe in the 1800s, they brought something like this with a little bit of root, and they didn't know that they had some phylloxera sitting back on the. Maybe we can switch to the back to the big camera again. They didn't know that they had some phylloxera in the roots. They brought them to Europe, and from there on, the phylloxera spread through all over Europe. And in the course of about 60 years, 90% of all European viticulture was destroyed. All the vines were, they died because they were not resistant to this pest. And probably many varieties just went extinct. Many varieties they had, we don't know about anymore because they just went extinct.
Also, South America too had a lot of phylloxera.
A lot. Phylloxera now has spread to all over the world. Just in certain very sandy and rocky soils, it cannot survive, and there you'll be still able to plant own-rooted Vitis vinifera on their own roots. Everything else is grafted, and that's the process I'm going to talk about quickly. So this is the rootstock, and then here, this is the graft, the grafting union. That is where they literally put a sign, a little cutting of the variety we want, in this case, Cabernet Sauvignon, on a young plant of the rootstock, 420A, and they make just a cut, put them together, put a little bit of tape around it, and then they'll just grow together. And if we can switch one more time to the little camera here, I can show you the grafting union here. So what you see here, this is what we call a callus. So there is some tissue which grew after they made the cut here, and it fused these two. So this is Cabernet Sauvignon, and this part down here is the 420A, the 420A, and this is the grafting union. And so this, if you look closely in our vineyard, you'll find everywhere. Now, as we're gonna plant them, we can switch to the big camera again. So we're gonna plant them. We make a little hole, put them down, we give them a little bit of fertilizer. And a new system we're going to do, we're going to plant them with one of these pipes at each plant. And what that enables us is exactly. So, we want to train the young guys early so they know what they ought to produce. No, in the old days, we used to drip the water. We had drip irrigation for the young vines, and we would just drip the water on the top of the soil, which meant these are planted about a foot deep. The water had to trickle down a foot deep through the soil until it would reach the roots. And so a lot of the water evaporated, it was wasted, or some weeds took the water rather than our young vines. But this is called, subterranean irrigation. And so we basically give the water right to the roots. We don't lose anything to evaporation, and we don't feed the weeds. So this is a new system I'm trying to implement this year, and we're very interested about that.
So I think this has been a common theme throughout this is, last week you brought cultured butter and tried to bring culture in, but he continues to bring dirt and plants and tractors and everything into the kitchen. But I actually love it. I mean, this is.
Yeah, exactly.
This
you
is
love it,
So I'm going to actually go out on a limb here, and no, I'm not even going to do that. So we've got somebody, from Germany, so you're going to have to tackle that because that's more syllables than I can in German that I can tackle.
So this is my mother who wrote "Hallo, liebe Grüße aus Staufen, Germany." So Staufen being the little town my parents live in, and Angelika Mengel is my mother. And "Hallo, liebe Grüße" means hello and greetings with love, roughly, from Staufen in Germany. Thank you, Mom.
We're gonna get some. We're gonna get some wine. So, greeting. And hey, Dave, do you want to say hi to Cindy? Run here real quick. She said hi.
Hello, Cindy. Cindy is in Michigan. Cindy is my niece, and we're glad that you could make it. Thank you.
All right, and we're back. So we're gonna get some wine open here. Cindy, thanks for joining us. Hope all is well in crazy Michigan. So I've got a couple of ribeye steaks that I butchered out and threw a little roasted garlic on there. So Juan Pablo from Mendoza, if you're on with us, Argentinian style with a little bit of roasted garlic. I got to put that on there. So just a little lemon, salt, and pepper. I'm going to throw these in this oven. Bread's done. Jonathan's got some great rye bread, nice spread that we're going to talk about. But we're going to get into some wines because that's what we are. We're a vineyard and a winery.
Exactly. Looking at those, next time we should maybe make some carpaccio. Just have it raw.
We could do that. There's 3 of them. I can
Yeah,
cook 2
exactly. And I eat just one as is. Exactly.
All right. I'm going to throw these in, and as Juan Pablo calls it, I'll cook you the living cow.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, Jonathan, why don't you? So we're going to work through a couple of these wines. The first one we're going to do, we talked about some grilling wines.
Oh yeah, I'm excited about that one.
So what this is this is our Grenache Mourvedre. Can somebody grab me a bottle of rosé? It'd be kind of fun to start off with the different colors of that. So we basically have these
Still doing
3
it.
grapes, Grenache, Syrah, Mourvedre. We'll get to that at the very end, the full combination. But the Grenache and Mourvedre we use for the rosé, and this is it's a phenomenal grape. It's just a lot of intensity and a lot of things we can do with it. I'm gonna throw these in while I talk here. If I don't fumble it. All right. Got to get the meat cooking. All right, so we've got the bottle of rosé. I forgot to grab that nice cold. I call this liquid summer, just something you want to dive into. So this is Grenache Mourvedre. This is Grenache Mourvedre. This has about 6.5, 7 hours on the skins. This has a full couple weeks on the skins. Every year during harvest, there's always this wine that just it's like I call it a dark horse. It's something that surprises me. I mean, you probably experienced this too.
I'm just waiting where you're going with that, and then I'll tell a story.
Okay,
too.
all right. Maybe the same place, may not be. But I try not to be prejudiced when they come in. You taste the grapes, you kind of try to think where they're going to go. It's just like the kitchen when I'm tasting ingredients and I'm kind of thinking where a dish is going to go, and then sometimes something is so ripe, it really works well. And every year there's always something that surprises me. And there's a particular vineyard that maybe was it was really it was fine for years and years, and all of a sudden one year, one vintage is just like, wow, did you taste that one? It's just I'm getting all of this type of these different types of flavors. I would love to take credit for it, but as I've always said, the wine's made in the vineyard, and I'm just trying to bring the best out in these wines. And I tell you, this Grenache Mourvedre really was that dark horse this year in the 19 vintage. There's a lot of other ones, but this one stood out to us. And so Jonathan and I, we talked about it, and he said, we could really do a lot of different things with this wine. And so it's going to become, 1, 2, 3, 4 products in our product line, all remarkably different. In fact, we could put that together and, it'd be really fun because it's kind of the same ingredients, but handled a very different way. So we're kind of playing in the kitchen, so to speak. I mean, here's our kitchen. He brings plants and tractors in, and, we have this, beautiful setting, but we have these beautiful wines. So where this really went with me is when we started tasting the ferment, when it was, early on in the stages, the flavors, the fruit flavors were just exploding out of this thing. And it was just, we couldn't keep our nose out of this thing.
Yeah.
You just keep putting you put your head in the tank every day. You're smelling these wines and really smelling where they're going to go.
So in case you wonder what was happening, after we process the grapes and we put them in a tank, and then we wait a little bit until the fermentation starts. But you sniff the tank every day to make sure that everything is all right. And then as fermentation starts, then you have to get in there and punch down. So we do indeed put our noses a lot into the tanks. And then when those were, I think the day after or so, they were in the tank, and we started to, wow, did you smell this? And then, yeah, you're right. And it was, I talked about it last week, I think,
Yeah.
This is like this like raspberry flavor or whatever, and it's like it was so intense and fresh, and so we had this idea to preserve that. However, I also want to say I also can't take credit for these grapes because the Grenache doesn't grow on in our vineyard. So that's another vineyard manager who grew these where we source those grapes.
Well,
from.
maybe you picked these up at the right time. I think you drove one of the trucks.
Have driven down there and got the grapes.
We brought in 90 tons of grapes this year, and so this gave us the ability to make this really fun lineup of wines. And this is only a small segment of what we're doing, but it's really fun to come back and smell this right now. So what we're actually tasting, and these will, we'll get these back out to you. We're going to bottle this probably in about 2 months over the summer. So this is going to be an early release wine. This is what I call a grilling wine. It's something that I would literally drink chilled on a day exactly like today. It's hot. It's a red wine. I'm in front of the barbecue. I'm working, and it's a chilled red wine. It's light in color. So if can we flip to this side camera? Am I in it?
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah. This way. Sorry. It's left.
There
we go. I'm getting it. So it's lighter in color than you'll see when we get all the way to the Syrah. It's going to be a lot darker in color. And the Grenache Mourvedre, Grenache Syrah Mourvedre is going to be darker in color as they progress up. What we're going to do is we kept this one in stainless, no oak on it, very light in body. So all it's doing is expressing the fruit character from the vineyard. And I'm still very excited, just like it was.
So maybe let's drink it before it's completely warm.
All right.
Cheers.
Cheers.
I think this really did what we were hoping to do. This will be really good cold. It's very crisp,
good acidity.
And it has this wonderful fruitiness to it. So this will be really awesome with these. I mean, I don't think the cow is quite alive anymore, Juan Pablo, but
this end is.
Yeah. Okay. Anyhow, I thought he was going to tell you the story about the rosé, because there's every year there is a black horse, something which is surprising, and I think that is actually where then great winemaking shows itself, when you not get into the way of the grapes. Sometimes a wine will just show you, hey, I want to be this, and then if a winemaker is then open to say well, let's try this. I had this other plan, but I'm not going to force it. I think that's something which is very important, and we did that here, so that's cool. But the rosé, it's kind of I know you guys love it, and I like it too, but when this guy makes rosé, these are usually not good days.
It's our simplest wine, but yet it's the hardest to make. You just have to babysit this thing for hours and hours and hours.
He sits literally by that crate with the mashed grapes, and sort of you cannot go away. And then at some point, I could go 10 minutes, or he gets a phone call and he come back, and then because they extract color so quickly, and all of a sudden you don't have this, but you have this all of a sudden. So this is always a little bit high tension on the rosé days here.
Well, funny story is that's how we came to get Zinfandel, because I originally did a Zinfandel rosé, and I overshot the runway. And, it's like stop the press, and it was like, well, it's too late. So I said, you know what, let's just run it on through. And then I went for the I was able to pick up the Grenache and Mourvedre, and this has been phenomenal ever since. So it was it's one of those happy mistakes. That happened, and now we have a Zinfandel and this full lineup. So it's that's how it is. But I'll take that as a compliment in staying out of the way of the grapes.
Definitely, I think with this one we really you did that well.
So let's try let's try the oaked version. So I'm going to come to that. So this is the Grenache Mourvedre. So what's going to happen with this wine here?
Thank you.
So the color is not a whole lot different. The exact same wine. but this has been in oak barrels instead of stainless barrels. And so this is going to stay on oak for 2 years versus the stainless, which we're going to bottle here. It's a 1 year. It's a quick to market wine, but it's lighter body. This will develop a little bit more character and depth to it. You can always start smelling the oak on it. It's not.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I couldn't wait.
Yeah, a little richer in the palate.
There's a question about what makes you decide to keep it in stainless versus an oak. Well, the whole point was we talked about this fruitiness, freshness we experienced as the wine was still fermenting, and many of these fruit aromas is called primary or secondary aromas, which are either coming directly from the grape itself, so they will be actually in the grape themselves, or they are formed during fermentation, and they're rather volatile and they disappear rather quickly and make room to then other aromas which are more long lasting. And if you put a wine in wood barrels, those more volatile aromas tend to dissipate over the course of 2 years. And so you're left with more long-lasting aromas like these, like dark berries, roasted flavors, leather, spices. But these very delicate, fresh aromas tend to disappear unless you put it in stainless steel, which will seal it off from oxygen, because oxygen is the culprit here. It helps to form and sort of stabilize some aroma components and also color, but it is rather destructive to these like very fresh aroma components. Just think of, you cut an apple, you smell it immediately, and you have this like fresh apple smell to it, and then you let it sit for 10 minutes, and then you have this more like champagne apple, a little bit ripe apple as the apple browning. Browning, exactly. And that's the same thing that happens with
Oxidation.
the wine. Yeah.
So that's amazing in the cellar. What's happening with these wines is the oak barrel wines are evaporating. They're changing. This has already got a richer integration would be the word I would use. So more integrated flavors. It's going to be a deeper, richer wine.
Right.
In the end, I can smell that oak, but it's not something I'd want to drink while I'm grilling.
No.
Yeah. So I mean, the stainless steel one, it's fresh. I want to chill it. That's what I'm going to drink while I'm grilling. Now, the other one I may want to drink during dinner.
Yeah.
And something that's a little more complex. It's not as light in body. So I think both of them are doing exactly.
Yeah. I agree.
Exactly what we want. So that was the decision: stainless versus oak, and it's something very new. I've not really done much stainless, but it's kind of fun.
Ultimately, you guys will decide. Whatever sells best. If it sells well, then we'll do it again. If not,
there's not much of it. There's not much of it. It's gonna go.
Then it's the feedback we're gonna get from from you guys. So.
And it's all kinds of fun. So let's move to the. Why don't we move to the full Grenache Mourvedre?
Yeah.
So then you've heard of the title, the GSM, and I'm gonna flip here. I don't know if we can see that. So there, I got to get my orientation right. Sorry, I'm like driving backwards here. Yep. All right. So GSM. So that GSM is Grenache Syrah Mourvedre. So that's it's a Rhone style. It's a blend, kind of like a Bordeaux style blend. But in the Rhone, they'll list those where in Bordeaux they didn't choose to list all those grapes in those in that configuration.
Yeah, French are kind of weird.
Yeah, no, but that's what they do. And so all right, so we're gonna move. So this you're gonna notice right off the bat is a lot darker. This one just the color in the glass. And that's going to be the Syrah component that's going to pull that nice and dark.
Wow.
There's a bottle of Syrah in the that I forgot. It's one of these sample bottles. So you're probably noticing these funky little sample bottles. Is it down? No, that one's empty. I think I left there. Sorry, folks. So these are all the sample bottles. So my refrigerator is typically littered with these, and they've got blue tape on them, and it's I write little notes on them. So this is what I go grab samples out of the barrels that I'm tasting with and working with. So, unlike the finished bottles that most all of you see. Yep, they're bringing the bottle of Syrah. So I knew I grabbed a bottle of it. Thank you, Kanoka. All right. I said Kanoka's name. Sorry, was I not supposed to? Can I flip to this camera real quick? So, all right. So yeah, they're all running right now. I'm showing the production crew. Kanoka ran off. These guys hate when I do this. So this is what it looks like. This is what I'm looking at. You know, they're all standing here from the vineyard. So I'm getting them in the camera too. You guys get tired of looking at me, maybe, or him. So we think we're good-looking guys, but got these great hats.
Can one of you hit the tablet
Low
again? There is something.
So immediately, I mean, I'm seeing the color depth and that Syrah, just really.
It really comes to you.
Yeah,
you
I
know,
mean,
you get this like.
It's a much bigger wine.
Yeah, it's a much bigger wine.
Absolutely.
You get these much more
Savory notes.
savory notes. That's a good word. Yeah, so I would say like sort of a little bit of leather.
Mhm.
You get a little bit of cigar box. I mean, it's still young, but
I mean, these are barrel samples, so this has only been in not even technically a year.
Yeah.
Because it came in the fall. So all of these are barrel samples, and then we'll do the Syrah, which if you're seeing these in the sunlight, that's the Syrah there, and you can just see the light kind of move through some of these bottles here.
The Syrah will literally like stain the glasses.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah,
if you have this like purple glass,
it'll hue it a purple color, and when you can always tell when when you're doing Syrah, when you're crushing it, it's like my hands are just purple. You just can't get the color out of them for weeks. But I'm smelling those steaks. That's smelling good.
Yeah.
I have to pull those back a little bit. But so we had a question about the percentage of Syrah, the percentage in the grape. So the finished the 17 that we're going to do that has it's 44% Grenache, 19 Mourvedre, and 37 Syrah. Typically, about a third of each is kind of where I go with it, but it changes from day to day. Vintage to vintage. It's not always that exact. It's more a matter of blending them and tasting them, similar to the Bordeaux, wines, where we change the percentage based on the best flavor, that we can find. So, it does change. So it's different vintage to vintage, and that's what
absolutely,
makes it fun.
yeah, and that's interesting.
So want to move to that Syrah?
I do.
All right. So this thing is dark, dark, dark. I'm going to pour a little bit extra in your glass. You can swirl that, and we'll watch how that inks up that glass. I mean, you can already see that the bottle itself has got a kind of an ink hue to it.
Yeah. Nice legs.
Yeah. So that's running down. All
yes,
right, girls.
Yes,
we
ladies.
were talking about the wine.
For once, I was not talking about you, but about where's HR when you need it.
So this wine actually is. Somebody asked about the percentages. So in all truth, only the seller knows. But this actually has some Viognier in it, so it actually has white wine in it, which sounds crazy that you would get a wine this dark by with white wine in it. You'd think that it would dilute it down, but it actually makes it darker, gives it much more complexity because of the co-pigmentations.
Yeah.
So
the
Viognier
brings some components in, which then sort of fuse with the color components of the
skins
of the Syrah,
anthocyanins and the skins.
Exactly, and make them
out
darker, and at the same time, help them to stabilize them, and so we get like a darker wine.
So guaiacol is one of these chemicals that's components that's in the grape, and it's I always kind of liken it to kind of these smoky pork style aromas and textures. Smelling that, and and that's what that Viognier does. So that's what's really exciting about this wine. So, we've taken that, although we threw in a fifth grape there, but it's kind of it's a minor component, but it's that secret ingredient that really kind of brings that to life. But we're getting some really cool sun kind of moving through these wines, right now, and if you're seeing the view that I'm seeing, I'm going to move this camera to the back side here, and you can see the difference in these. So this one's a Syrah, and the sun's hardly even coming through it, and this is the Grenache Syrah Mourvedre. Less sun, a little bit more, and then these two are the same wine, so you're getting that sun coming through there. So it's again lighter body wine. This one has the oak, this one has stainless, and that's not going to change the color really significantly whatsoever. But just kind of fun to look at, on there. I'm going to pan over here to these. All right, so we've got the steaks working. They're looking really good. I don't know if you're hearing that sizzle. Can you hear that? Are we getting that on
burn
there?
the microphone.
We could burn that microphone. We don't want to do that, but it's all looking good there. So, all right. So, we've got some rye bread. I've got some regular bread. I've got some vegetables going. I've got a cutting board.
Yeah, I need a cutting board, and then I prepare you a little.
Jonathan's going to talk a little bit. He made a great German style dish. That's very. We've talked about some regional things. So take it away.
What I brought you today is when we were baking the other day, there were a couple of people who asked us about what starter we're using, and the bread we're making here right now in the oven. That's basically just a yeast bread. However, it ferments for a very, very long time, so it gets a very, very complex flavor. There we go. However, since I moved to the Bay Area, I totally started to do the Bay Area thing and made sourdough bread. I thought, it was a German thing because in Germany, we really don't have anything else than sourdough bread. It's not a big deal here, but apparently it is here. So, and my starter is actually completely, made from scratch. I just put flour and water together and waited until it started bubbling. And then what I did, I put in 1 teaspoonful of our wild Cabernet yeast. So the lees out of a Cabernet tank to give it some extra boost and to, have something cool to talk about.
That's my secret ingredient.
And so what you can see here is three different types of rye bread. And you will notice that they're very flat. Rye doesn't have a lot of gluten, so they don't rise a lot. And I didn't have a loaf pan, so I just baked them flat, and so they're kind of flat. And so one of them here has a lot of grains in them and a little bit of seeds on top of them. And then these two, one is plain, and the other one has some spices in it, like caraway, cumin, and fennel, which are typical spices for rye bread in Germany. And then I'm going to cut a couple of slices, and then I'll put something on it. Thank you. So I'm going to...
This was made a couple of days ago, and you said something interesting that rye bread,
right.
And I can see when you're cutting it, it's lost some of its moisture.
Exactly.
And I can kind of see that. You said it gets better about 2 to 3 days after you bake it, versus this style of loaf that you
want to eat it as fresh as possible.
So
exactly.
Just two different styles.
So rye bread, as you can see here now, that's very dense and dark, and it's fairly high in moisture when it's freshly baked, and it doesn't taste all that great. So, but the thing is, it lasts for quite a long time. It doesn't go stale, and so at least not for like 5 days or so. And so after like 2 or 3 days after baking, it will actually be at its best, which is pretty much now. I baked it on Sunday, and so that's what I brought. And to go with it, I made something my grandmother makes usually, and she still makes it every now and then. I have my knife right here.
All right.
But it's in Germany, so it's kind of hard to ship over. And I brought you some pictures. I made it on the weekend too. it's this stuff here, which is called Griebenschmalz. It's a pork lard, a rendered pork lard. And if you look here, it has the cracklings still in it. And what's then also in it is little bits and pieces of onion and ground apples. So you grate an apple and you grate an onion and throw that in there, and then you render the lard slowly, the fat until it browns, and then you fill it in jars. Put a little bit of majoram in it too, and you fill it in jars just as it's about to solidify. Otherwise, all the cracklings and all the good stuff would settle to the ground. And so that's how you do it. And well, I have to send one jar home to my grandmother and see whether I get her approval. You know, whether I did well.
Made the grade.
Yeah, exactly. It's already, you know, getting it's way too hot. You know, it was not meant to be consumed in California. It's for cold Germany. But so it's.
I don't think you get days like this in Germany.
It's melting. Well, it's melting
not
away.
Regular ones.
Yeah, but you know, it's anyway more of a winter food. You know, it's obviously plenty of calories, which are supposed to keep you warm. And so you put that on a bread, put a little bit of salt and pepper on it. Where's my pepper mill? Here. And you will actually, if you find like traditional German pubs or bars, you'll be often able to order a Schmalzbrot. That's what that called. So Schmalz, Griebenschmalz on Brot, bread. Schmalzbrot, you'll get this often with a pickle. And yeah, this is something very typical. And you can obviously also use that to cook, you know, make great fried potatoes with it. And so and here is then the meat. So yeah, that's something I made, and I hope we could see some of the pictures when I ground the meat and rendered the fat. I put them, maybe they'll show up eventually there. Yeah, there you can see the meat grinder going. So that's when I was grounding the meat, the fat. It's just like the back fat. And then, you know, there you see it on the stove as it's slowly rendering and melting away. And then the next picture is with all the apple and the onion pieces in. And then I think the last picture is the 3 loaves of bread I baked on Sunday. All right.
That's beautiful stuff.
Thank you.
These
you want to try one?
I do. But,
but
I'm going to cut this. I don't want to talk.
You're going to brace yourself first.
just want to make one more one more comment. So we've got the steaks come out. We've got bread. We've got basically East meets West. We're doing this all the time. We're gonna move through these 2 wines probably as we these are our finished wines. But I just wanted to let you know that we're very excited. Starting this Friday, we're going to be opening up to wine club members only. We want to keep a kind of a peaceful, tranquil environment, doing the greater good of keeping the spread of COVID down. We want to welcome you back in a very safe, healthy, and wholesome way, protecting our staff, protecting you, letting you have this beautiful view and that's out here. Maybe Jonathan, you could pick the camera up and do a quick pan, out there just to let them see that it's a pretty special view right now. There's just no smog, and that's one thing that we fortunately enjoyed. It's been a result of this, the lack of driving. So we're gonna get a little bit less smog and maybe a little bit of reprieve from global warming. You're into that, but anyways, we've got a wonderful plan to bring you back safely to our vineyards. We've got a beautiful outdoor setting. Our staff will be adorned in beautiful house family, uniforms, face coverings that we'll have to protect them and you. Nice social distancing, great breezes, so a very safe environment that we feel we can bring you back in. We debated long and hard about how we should go about this and whether we should do this, and if this can we provide a safe location, and we absolutely believe we can. Dave House and I talk daily about this. Very socially conscious, about bringing people back here in a safe and wholesome, healthy manner, and we think we can do it. In fact, we know we can do it. We've got a beautiful setup. The crew has been working all week, made some fun improvements to the tasting room, and we're looking forward to getting you back up here. We love connecting with everybody out from Germany to San Diego to all over the state. But we really would love to get you back here, and we'll continue these. I think this has been. I've had a great.
I
time
had a lot
doing
of time too, and
It's
I'm sure once there's people back on the streets again, people will, go, hey, I saw you on video. But
so something I was reminded of. I said that I went and grabbed all these samples, and I took a quick video of that, and it's I don't know if they can pull it up. So it's proof positive that we actually have a cellar, and I actually work in it. So reception's not great in the cellar. So this is me up on the barrels smelling. You'll see a wine glass. I'm actually tasting it. So I taste the wines as I'm bringing them. So I'm actually filling these bottles. So it's kind of a fun thing to do. It was the best job ever today because it's 55 degrees in there. My shirt was wet. The cellar fans were blowing. It's like the best air conditioning ever. So I didn't tell the rest of the crew.
You may catch a cold.
They're all looking at me like, why didn't you have me do that job?
Yeah, guy. Whoever asked that question, I was totally a time lapse. He works fast, but not that fast.
Well, it was actually slowed down, so I
yeah.
That was at half speed. Sorry. Anyways, we've really enjoyed doing this series, bringing you cooking techniques. From
weird German meat things.
Two continents, 3 continents, exploring the wines, and we'll continue to connect like this. It's been a very fun segment. In fact, we may connect with some live people next week.
Oh yeah, we might do that.
We may have some guests here, so we can connect and continue this on. So, I am starving right now.
Me too.
I haven't had lunch.
Yeah.
We've got this stuff. I am waiting to dig into this. So, got some great breads, some great wine. So, to all of you out there, cheers. Stay safe. Stay mighty. We look forward to having you back up here.
See you
Cheers.
soon, guys. Cheers.